This episode, minimizing your spending on materials. We received an email from Gus asking, how do we minimize our spending on materials? We thought this was a great topic, so we're going to give you some tips and tricks that old John and Larry use, the old handyman pros, that we use to reduce our spending on materials and supplies, and possibly, just possibly, you could apply some of these principles to other portions of your life and reduce your spending in general. Welcome to the Handyman Pros Radio Show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros Radio Show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition's entitled, Minimize Your Spending on Materials. And to help me explain, as always, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy, John. John, tell people a story about how we're going to help save them money on the materials in their home.
Well, Larry, thanks for throwing it back to me on that one.
You're welcome.
All right, now you can relax, folks. I'm going to tell you, I will tell you that I went into the store the other day and I had to buy some. Now I hadn't bought hard tools. What I call hard tools is wrenches and things like that for a while, and then I had to buy some crow's feet. If you folks out there know what that is, it's kind of looks like an open-ended wrench that you can put on the end of a socket. And I had to get some of these things, and I hadn't had crow's feet for a long time. Anyways,
it sounds like a disease, John. It sounds like a disease. Yeah,
it does sound like a disease, doesn't it? Yeah. But what I did? I said, I don't really use these things. I'm not busting these things up, really hard, in a car and anything like that. And so I decided, well, I'm gonna. I just went to the internet and got them. I got them a lot cheaper than what I saw in the store, a lot cheaper. And I don't like to buy cheap tools, but these are absolutely perfect for the job. So, I think it kind of leads into what we want to talk about here is, I want to, minimize what I was going to spend on those things.
Yeah, and that's we're going to run down. First thing, right? We're just going to start planning. Have a good plan, right? Understand what it is that you want to do, right? I mean, we talk about this about everything, but it really, really, really is true. If you want, you have to be planned out. You can't save money, right, if you have to go get it right now. You just can't.
That's a great point, Larry. And that was one of the things that when I looked at these tools I was going to buy, I did not need them that instant. And I thought about that, it's kind of the unconscious competent in me on this kind of spending. It was like, you're exactly right. I didn't need them right now. So I could go back and research where to get something very similar, much cheaper.
Yeah. Well, or at least validate your pricing model in your head. Right. So, exactly. But that's all part of that plan. And that's also part of that plan is, basically, I wrote this, so I'm just going to say it. If you can anticipate your needs, you're a step ahead, right? So I'm going to use a personal experience. And we'll get into some of these other points, but I had a major home renovation coming up, I'm in process right now, but coming up for the past year, I've had this major renovation that I know I was going to do on a rental house that I have, right? So with a year's worth of, I'm going to call it not knowledge, but anticipation, I had a whole list of things that I need, right? A whole huge list because it's a studs out remodel, folks. So, I know exactly, or almost knew exactly what I needed, but that included flooring, and toilets and sinks and faucets and blah, 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 blah. Makes a huge difference. Understanding where you're going and having like a time frame involved in it, right? So in this case, long story, but we were actually waiting to close on the house. It got tied up in the COVID gig, and so it got pushed and kept getting pushed. And actually that worked to my advantage because it just allowed me to slowly accumulate more and more materials for this home. And voila, today I've pretty much got everything I need, and I got most of it at a discounted rate. So anyway, have a good plan. Understand and anticipate your needs, right? That's probably one of the big things, right? One of the second things is right now, It's really important right now. I think you can agree with this, John, right? Know the trends in the industries.
And we've been talking about this now for almost a year.
Right.
And that is from our sources telling us that, if you're going to build a deck, you're going to do anything big with a lot of, framing lumber and things like that, don't do it at that point. Because the trends, where the lumber was high, right?
Yeah, because of COVID, because of shutdowns and built up demand and supply chain issues and blah, blah, blah.
Everything else. And it's raised the price of lumber like crazy. And to hold off for a year, I mean, that is one of the trends that we're all seeing. So, like we were talking about before the show, some of the people that I saw putting on big decks over the last 6 months, doing a lot of construction inside their house, that they probably paid a lot of money for that lumber.
And all the new construction as well. Yeah. Easily double. And the other thing I just want to mention, and things happen, right? So understand that the world is a dynamic place and things happen. And there's two issues that came up that we didn't think about. One, supply chain issues. Do you all remember when the ship got turned sideways in the Suez Canal? That caused a major problem for all supply chain worldwide. You just don't realize on the other side of we're in the United States, folks, north of Atlanta. On the other side of the world, a ship turned sideways in the Suez Canal, and all of a sudden we can't get XYZ. It just is crazy to me. It's crazy. But that's the world that we live in. And then the second thing, I just want to mention this, the ice storm that hit South Texas, right? And this came to me actually from one of my clients, but we know it's true. We've read it elsewhere. 40% of all the plastic resins in the world, folks, come out of South Texas. That ice storm caused a huge supply chain problem. You say, what does that have to do with construction? The amount of plastic that is put into a modern home is tremendous. Everything from electrical outlets to some of your lumber is actually plastic infused. It's held together with plastic type substrates. To wire, you say wire? Well, the coating on it is made out of petrochemical products, right? So it's plastics. And anyway, blah, blah, blah. But that's put kind of a kink into the works too. And be aware that some of this stuff goes on, and sometimes it seems so unrelated, but yet at the same time, it's relevant to us here today now, right? So that's something. Do you agree with that, John?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Those are very good. Those are valid points. People don't realize, and a lot of folks don't realize that, when you get an oil shortage, and we might have another one coming up here, the hurricane season,
right?
The price of fuel goes up, the delivery goes up on everything, prices going up, the inflation. I mean, it's get a little hectic. Let's put it that way.
Just a tad.
I mean, remember the time, and it's loosened up now, but remember when we were talking about this on an episode a little while ago about what the heck's going on in the aisles at the big box stores.
Yep.
And I couldn't even find electrical work boxes.
No,
the blue plastic ones.
They're still in kind of short supply. Still.
Yeah. So I know it's loosening up a little. It's loosening up. I was just in there the other day, but it was crazy. So
yeah. So, Johnny, give me a brass tacks. What is a great way to help save some money? Give me one. Just give me the next one.
Well, let's say that if you're looking at electrical wire, I'm going to give you that one.
Okay.
As you know, so let's say that you're in your a bathroom remodel, or you're doing a basement, and you need 50 feet of wire. Go look at the 250 foot roll.
Yes, bulk buy
versus 50 foot of wire or 100 feet of wire. They're almost the same price. And as I understand it, is that the big roll, the 250, is more of a standardized roll, and it's set. The pricing is more set with the market than it is on the cut pieces, the smaller home, DIY side of things, and they know people are paying more for it.
Yes, and that brings up one of the things that I'm big about: save and store any excess that you have, right? But do it on a units-based pricing, right? Look at the cost per foot, and to your statement that you just made, it's spot on. Many times, the cost differential, like wire is a great one, John. It's a perfect example, because if you think about it, that 50-foot piece of wire will cost you 70, 80 cents a foot, whereas the 250-foot piece, and it's just what you just said because it's a standardized length, will cost you in the 50s right now. This is, in today's, maybe 48 cents a foot. That's 25%. The difference in cost is not that much. I mean, the actual dollars you're going to lay out is not that much. And John, I have to ask you this question. Does electrical wire go bad when you store it?
It's funny you just said that, because when I built out my basement and I did that whole thing, I still have I'll bet I still have 50 feet of wire left over, at least 50 feet, maybe even 100 feet of wire left over, because I bought a big bulk of it back then. And so to that point, no, electrical wire is electrical wire, right? It's still code. Let's put it that way.
Correct. Yeah, correct. I mean, the reason that I mention that, folks, is so if you don't know, I worked in the vending industry forever, and we had to be really careful on purchasing products because product went bad, right? I mean, it literally got out of date. Life. Yeah, it had shelf life. And so if you have shelf life items, it's not so good. Let's talk something in the building trades, right? Paint, for example. Saving and storing a lot of extra paint for extended periods of time, it's kind of marginal, right?
Yeah, I'm not that guy, actually.
Yeah,
I don't like to have cans of paint around.
Yeah, it's subject to environmental, also. So if you stick it in your garage and say you live even here in Georgia, you got to admit, if it freezes, you just killed it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does every once in a while in North Georgia, outside of Atlanta, we get a freeze on it. And so if that paint actually freezes, now you're throwing it away. So think about it in that sense, is that if it has, lumber, for example. So if you've got some lumber and you're storing it inside, meaning in your basement or your garage, pretty much going to last forever, right? Now, if you store it outside on the ground, at least in Georgia anyway, the termites are going to get into it and it's going to be shot in 2 years, or so. So you got to kind of think about this stuff, but save and store excess. I wrote in my notes here, one of my favorite pet peeves is when we're doing a drywall project, John, right? And you know where I'm going with this, but I hate cutting new lumber for nailers. So folks, if you don't know this, sometimes like you'll cut the drywall and you need to add a piece of 2x4 or something in to nail the new drywall to, just because of, it's a long story, but anyway, you always use these nailers. And I just hate cutting new lumber to make nailers. Now, there's a lot of guys out there, they don't care. They cut new, the old school guys, I'm not wasting my time saving all that stuff. And they just, they're just ripping up boards and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, no, Larry's not doing that. Because I personally, it gets deeper than that. I don't want to throw this stuff out. That means you got to pay for it to get rid of it. It's filling up landfills with stuff that you can reuse, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, that's save and store your excess and buy it on the unit pricing, and buy bulk if you can. It's funny, John, I was in Lowe's this morning and I needed some 3/4 inch PVC elbows, just 90-degree elbows, right? And I can't remember what the numbers are. Well, yeah, I do remember what the numbers are. 61 cents a piece, or I could buy the 10-pack for $4.78, which is 48 cents. I needed 5 of them. So what did I buy? Well, I bought the 10-pack because it actually is less money than 5 of them.
It's not that hard to store either.
No, and they don't go bad, even unless you leave them in the sun.
Matter of fact, that's funny. Again, you said it, because I still have, PVC pieces and parts that I've left over from a lot of projects that I use. And I'm like, I think about it, and I'm like, in this store, I'm like, yeah, I know, I still got some of those. Now, I'm not the guy, I don't want to hoard this stuff, and I don't want to, put it all over my, but
have you been in your house? Have you been in your house?
Yeah, been in my house, Larry. I actually live in it.
I just was saying it's an inside joke, John. You're a hoarder. Face it. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna be on a TV show.
Buried alive.
Yeah, buried alive. There he is.
There he is.
Don't take that piece of paper. I've had that since 1960.
Anyway,
but the thing is, but there's certain things that you can store. There's certain things that I don't like to, and paint is one of them. I'll keep a little bit of paint around just for touch up, but I don't like. I threw out. Man, I tell you what, I had to get rid of a whole bunch of paint. I couldn't take it anymore. But things like. I'll tell you the new products like the PVC trim and things like that.
Oh,
I will tell you that
forever.
Boy, if there's a sale on something like that, I'll be the first one down there to pick some of that up.
Well, yeah,
because I can leave that outside.
Yeah, so that's the next point: is look for sale items, right? So I know it sounds simple, folks, right? But think about it: buy stuff on sale, right? Duh. But it sounds crazy. But John, you and I both know this, right? Everything in almost every industry has some type of yearly cycle, right? And toss in here if you want. But if you're buying something that's seasonal, and folks, everything has a season. Retailers too. This is a little tip and John, you know this, and I know this, but some people don't know this. You can go into like the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, doesn't matter. They have a clearance rack out there all the time, right? And you'll walk up to the clearance rack and there will be sitting a faucet, for example, because I've done this. There's a faucet that's sitting there on the clearance rack and you look at it and you go, wait a minute, this is still in production. This is just down the aisle in the new aisle. And then you look at it and you realize that this particular faucet was one that they didn't rotate their stock forward, right? And they work everything on SKUs there. If it's been there more than 90 days, they put it on the clearance rack. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you'll buy that thing, the same thing that you can walk down the aisle and buy. Literally, I've done it, John. I've done it with like bathroom fixtures and things. You can walk down the aisle and it'll be 25 or 30% more. And it's the same faucet. It's not any different. It just has that particular faucet has sat there for 90 days or more. And so then they come to mark it down because they want to turn that inventory, right? That's a retail thing. That's a business thing. And so you got to look for those things. This all goes back to having that good plan, though. You don't go and buy a faucet unless you need it, right? But if you anticipate that you need a faucet, there you go, right?
Right. And I'll tell you right now, I'm on the hunt for, if I go, I don't need it, but I want to replace it, is a bar sink. And if I can find one, and I always look every time I go past that clearance shelf, the racks and all that kind of stuff, just if they have one of those stainless steel bar sinks, they're about $100 and everything. If they just got one of those sitting out there, I'm snagging that thing, and I mean, okay, but I can pay $100 for it, but I don't really need it. It goes back to planning. I will tell you, you mentioned seasonal promotions,
yep.
Larry.
Yep.
I'll tell you what we used to do when I was in as a mechanic and everything. One of the things I learned real quick was if we needed new shoes, never buy shoes until Father's Day.
And why is that?
They were all on sale.
Really?
They always went. All the shoes went on sale on Father's Day.
See,
so we always used to go down and get our shoes, new work shoes, on around the Father's Day weekend.
See, so folks, so there's a real tip right there. I did not know that. That's an amazing tip.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's funny you mentioned seasonal promotions, and the other thing is that it'll be seasonal promotions too. Is look for fertilizer.
Oh yeah, anything having to do with your landscape. Yeah, anything having to do with landscape. Always buy it in the fall because it's it's at the end of the season. It just always works that way. Yep. And folks, I grew up. My father sold bikes and boats, and trust me, in the fall we were selling everything we could to get rid of it because we didn't want to carry it through the winter. Because by the next year, it's already a year old, right? At that point, even if it's just a model year old, it's just that same thing. So we talked a little bit about returns and clearance items, right? So we talked a little bit about clearance items. Always look at the clearance racks. I look at the clearance rack every time I go in the store. Usually it's on an end cap someplace and I'm walking by it anyway. But I was in Lowe's this morning and I was looking at the clearance rack. Didn't see anything that I wanted this time, but I will say like 3 weeks ago I bought some oscillating tool blades because they were marked down. Again, they were brand new blades, but they were marked down like 25%. I'm like, well, these are for me a consumable. It's not
Correct.
if I'm going to use them, it's when, right? It's not if, it's when. And I know that, as night follows day, I'm going to use them. And they weren't, there's nothing wrong with them. It was just back to what I said. They were probably on that 90-day cycle and they were getting rid of them. And I'm like, dude, I'll take those. Hey, why not? Right? I'll save 25% on that.
You are right. You're right that these big box retailers, they work on SKUs.
Yep.
They're paying probably 25. They're probably paying 25. If I had to guess, 25% carry cost. For insurance and everything else on each item. So think about that. 25% over 4 years. You bought the product back again.
Yep.
So you might as well try to get rid of it.
Yeah, just get rid of it.
So you're right. They, their calculations are they're trying to flip this inventory so they can make some money on this stuff, other than carrying it.
And one other thing that I want to talk about, I do this a lot in the rental properties, but scratch and dent. And Johnny can attest to this one because he was with me one day. What did I buy one day on scratch and dent?
I think you bought a dryer. Is it?
It was a washer and dryer. I don't remember. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But things like that, like a washer and dryer. So from a scratch and dent, okay. Now I know that a lot of people like to showcase off their, washers and dryers in this room that's way off in the middle of nowhere that nobody sees. To me, if I can get a great deal on a washer and dryer, because nobody's going to see my washer and dryer, and if it's got a little scratch on it, and I just saved myself $200, hey, I'm in.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to use that example that we picked up there. That was 50% off.
That was 50. Yeah, you're right.
It was 50% off. So I bought an $800. It was $850 or something. I only remember it because I was like, I can't turn this deal down. And I actually,
no, Larry, you're so cheap you can sniff that.
Thanks, buddy. No,
you walked into that store and right back there like a hound to a steak, man.
Well, I literally at the time I literally needed a new washer for one of my properties, right? So it wasn't, and I've learned too, when you're doing the scratch and dent thing, particularly at the big box stores like the Lowe's and the Home Depots, you've got to check different stores because every store has its own thing, and like you and I, John, because we travel around doing our job, doing the handyman thing. We're in, how many different Lowe's and Home Depots do you actually visit on a regular basis? I know like I have about 4 or 5 that I go to on a really regular basis of each brand, meaning Home Depot and Lowe's. And I do that just because that's like where most of my jobs are. If I'm in one part of town, that's the Home Depot that I go to, is the one that's close by, right? And you do the same thing. So I've checked every store. And so we happen to be in that one. And as the story goes, we were in that store. I hadn't been in that store in years. I mean, I knew where it was and stuff, but I hadn't been in there in years. And we walk in there and there's that washer. And I was like, and you're like, I'll never forget. This is a great story. Johnny goes, where the hell are you going to put that thing? You don't have room on your truck. I said, I'm going to make room. And sure enough, we loaded that bad boy up and we went on our way. But yeah, do the scratch and dent thing. And that's even true that like they'll do that on the clearance aisle too. But if you're buying tools or I don't really care what you're buying. Sometimes if you don't mind a little dent, and for example, that washer had a dent on the back of the washer. Right. I was like, exactly. Who sees the back? Whatever,
Exactly.
Don't care, exactly. Right? In that case, didn't really care. So there's that. One of the other things that I shop at a lot, that if you're buying a one-off, meaning like you've got to do I don't know, a window or a cabinet or something. There are what I call them off-price retailers, right? Or they're wholesalers, or there's companies called Builders Surplus. They have these, they buy these things. There's a window and door place that I go to all the time when I'm just doing one, like if I've got to replace one window or one door on somebody's home, I'll go and look at these things. And you can say, same thing, you can save a huge amount of money on a one-off in particular. And sometimes they have matching units, but it's a little more hit and miss. But if you have a specific need, sometimes, I've bought windows, for example. These are for rental homes, but still I bought windows that fit right into where I was going, and they were 50% of the cost. Some of them were even less than that. I bought one window for $100 that I swear I was used to build glass a million years ago, and I know that kind of the specs on glass. And if I were to go order that window today, it probably would have been $1,000. And so I bought it for $100. Now it had been sitting there for 10 years because I saw the manufacture date on it. But guess what? Everything was still intact. It had been stored inside. Who cares? It fit what I needed at the time. Rock and roll. Right, so off-price retailers. There's all kinds of surplus building supply places and stuff like that.
And I'll also say this, this firsthand. Granite countertops.
Oh yeah, very much so.
A granite. If you need a small piece of granite, a lot of times these guys have pieces of granite that they've cut off, that they're remnants, and they're getting rid of them. Cheap. Very cheap on granite's that's a great example, Johnny. You want to buy a countertop, especially a small countertop, say a bathroom renovation or something like that. They'll sell it to you for 25 cents on the dollar, and it's first quality stuff. And really, I've done that several times. Also, actually, it's funny that you say that because I kind of forgot about that. Mm-hmm. That's why we do these things, John. It's perfect. Yeah, there you go. So one of the other things that we talk about, so this is more geared towards people in the trades and things like that. If you're actually working as a handyman or you're an electrical contractor or whatever, there are specialty retailers, right? So there are retailers that sell to HVAC and plumbing, electrical, landscape, even lumber yards to a degree. You got to shop pricing on these places because sometimes these specialty retailers have better deals than you can get at the big box stores or anywhere else for that matter. And I think it boils down to just how much volume they buy. I know in the HVAC business, like I was talking to one HVAC guy, and he actually was a dealer for, I can't remember, one of the brands, Train or something. And he was like, yeah, I buy these things for like 70. He goes, I buy so many of them, I'm starting to wholesale them because I'm buying them so cheap because I buy so many that I'm less expensive. I can buy them, less expensive. I actually can sell them and make money on them. So sometimes it helps to look at the specialty retailers. I guess one of the things we I don't know if we mentioned this, John, but you do have to have an understanding of what some of your things are going to cost, right? Like you should have an idea in your head of what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. And there is some fluctuation that happens in that stuff, right? So, lumber prices during COVID, when we were looking at, hey, I got a 2x4 for $4 a 2x4. You thought, man, that's a great deal. Well, in real times, that's like, oh my God, I paid $4 for a 2x4. That's crazy. But given the time and the place, you do have to have an understanding of what a basis is. So anyway, specialty retailers is a place. They also generally have a little better quality. Generally, not always, but generally, they have things that are more geared towards, we'll call them professionals, if you want to call it that. Do you do any of that, Johnny? Do you ever go into any of those places? Well, yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you a couple of points here. Is that when I was growing up, there was no such thing as an indoor lumber yard.
Right.
That there was no Home Depot, there was no Lowe's. There was, when I was a kid, I think it was in high school, one of the places in Chicago had just come out. Indoor lumber yard. What the hell is it? God, they can put a lumber yard inside a building, So now, but along with that comes a lot of labor to put all that lumber on the shelf. That's why the lumber in Home Depot and Lowe's, and especially trim, is a lot more expensive than you can get it in one of these specialty stores. That is a real lumber yard where contractors go. Trim is going to be a hell of a lot cheaper there because they don't have 15 guys stocking it, and they don't have to pay 15 guys. So that's a. And I will say that my friend had his deck, his son-in-law rebuilt the deck, and the lumber that he got from one of the lumber yards was far superior. The decking was far superior than anything I've ever seen come out of a big box store.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and that I would really say that's true with trim too, especially too. And if you have any kind of specialty trim, you're almost gonna have to go to a lumber yard because it's just like, oh, good luck trying to find it. There's way too much of that stuff. But anyway, yeah. So again, it's kind of a broad base. Have an understanding of what's going on and understand what other things that these specialty retailers are giving you. So, do they have good advice? Do they? I don't know. There's a million things. Do you like the people? Do they deliver? Do they deliver for free? For example, you want to buy a bunch, and do they deliver for free? All of those things also play into the pricing. Folks, don't undervalue your time. Because remember, going out to get all this stuff can be really time intensive, and your time is worth something. I think, in our case, Johnny and I, we'd rather be sitting on the deck drinking a beer, right, John?
Yeah, well, yes, but here's the other thing. You just brought it up is that the knowledge base that these specialty places have are fantastic.
Yep.
They've been in the business, the specific business for, let's say, lumber and decking. Okay, as an example, they're going to get a lot of feedback. And believe me, I've been in these places, and you should hear the conversations coming back from the contractors that have bought from them, good and bad, And they're saying, man, they always come back because you've got the best stuff. And they are an accumulation of this knowledge base of the people who are actually putting this stuff up all the time, and they've got all that knowledge as well, probably from doing it for years themselves. So in short, you walk into a place like that and you say, hey, I want to build a really nice deck that's going to last for, 40 years. They're going to give you a no nonsense, no BS answer about that. They're going to say, you need this kind of lumber. You need this grade. Don't get this. They're going to cut through all the crap.
Yeah. And the people that work there, general terms, been there a long time. They weren't turning burgers last week. They weren't, they weren't working customer service someplace last week, and now they're in the lumber department. They're people that specialize in that kind of stuff. General terms.
Exactly. And I will say that I've been in. I got to laugh because I've been in some plumbing supply houses, specific plumbing supply houses, not the aisle at the big box store. And you should hear the conversations in there with all the plumbers getting parts. And everybody, there's a consensus in there of what's awful and what's first class.
Yep.
What you never want to install and what you do want to install. What's trouble and what's not trouble. And it's really funny because I walked in there with a part for a client. And this plumber was just sitting there. He wasn't even working there. He was just sitting there waiting for the guy to come back from behind the counter with parts. And he looks at me. He's just shaking his head. He's just like, he goes, "What kind of toy are you playing with?" And I'm like, "Yep, I know." And I'm not gonna say anything badmouth anything right now, but he told me some good information. And these are the guys who've been in business for like 30 years. Now everybody's got their opinion, but my point here is that they have very specific knowledge. They get a lot of feedback from the field of what's working and what's not.
Yeah, and that's invaluable, in my opinion. It's invaluable. Invaluable. You can having a problem that creating your own problems is just. Please, you're not saving time, money, and aggravation when you're creating your own problems. Don't save $1 to create a problem that costs you 10. Just end of story. We don't need to talk about that more. So, all right, cool. Yeah, and those exist in every industry, right? It doesn't matter what you're talking about. There's HVAC, there's plumbing, there's electrical, there's landscape, there's decorating stores, there's tile stores. Everything. They've all got specialty retailers, and you need to, you don't need to, but you have to understand what they have and what do they offer. And each store can have its own specific personality. So, you might not like the local lumber yard. That's fine, but you also might find that there's somebody there that's really, really good. So. It's just kind of one of those kinds of things. One of my favorites that people rarely take advantage of is if you are a contractor of some sort, take advantage of some of the special promotions that people have just using the big box stores. There's Lowe's for Pros and HD Commercial, right? And both of those programs. If you're a contractor, they don't cost you anything to join. You got to give your email address. Wow. But you can join those programs, and you get access to a whole series of, their benefits. A lot of it's cost, some of it's cost. Lowe's gives you 5% off automatically on all that kind of stuff. So take advantage of that stuff. Understand almost every single retailer wants commercial business. Again, if you're a handyman or a contractor or something like that, or even if, like for me, I mean, as a rental property owner, they even want me. They want me because they know I'm not a once and done. I'm a multi-buyer, if you want to call it that. So they have promotions. And sign up for them. They're free generally. They're generally free. And as a corollary, there are organizations out there who you can join. And again, you either can pay or not, but generally they're free. And they offer you like a group of company discounts. One of them I'm thinking of is called Next Realty. I happen to be a member of Next Realty. It didn't cost me anything, but it gets me discounts at Sunbelt Rental. It got me introduced to Sherwin-Williams. It got me a couple of other things that I use on not all the time, but somewhat regular basis, but I get a little bit off on all of those. And so, and again, we were talking about suppliers. Every supplier pretty much has some kind of a promotion program. If you're a contractor, get into them and take advantage of them. Sherwin-Williams, my Sherwin-Williams discount's like 40%, just right off the top. And I am not a big painting contractor. I mean, I'm just not. I don't buy thousands of gallons a year. I don't even know that I buy hundreds of gallons a year. But I get 40% off the top of retail price. It matters, right, Johnny?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I will say that, you go to those specialties places like that, like a Sherwin-Williams, you're going to find brushes, rollers that you're not going to be able to find in a big box store either.
Yes.
I'm just, we're going to lay that out because if you want, you might want to think about spending $30 for a brush that might last you years and years and years. And a good brush is going to make a huge difference when you're painting your own house.
Yeah, and those specialty tools, they have a lot of specialty tools.
Exactly,
yeah.
Exactly. There's a reason why those places exist.
Yes.
So, anyways.
Yes. One of the other things, this is just talking about saving money on materials, right? Scour the internet. Look for online suppliers. I'm a big, I joined Supply House. Now, I'm going to talk. Supply House is an HVAC, plumbing, electrical thing. Now, I shop the pricing there. The other thing is back to this programs and promotions, they have a thing called Trademaster, and I signed up for Trademaster, and there's some great advantages to being a Trademaster if you're with Supply House, and I'm not promoting them per se, but everybody, on the online world, lots of times you can get huge, deep discounts. The big downside is you don't run down to the store and pick it up, and you kind of have to know what you're looking for because you have to be able to put a description in. So, for example, if you're doing electrical, and you need 14-2 wire, well, 14-2 wire is pretty much 14-2 wire, right, John? And you can type in 14-2 wire, and you're going to get an answer, Now, if you need some specialty plumbing product, that's a little bit different. But the online sources, and I regularly source through places like Supply House. I go to Amazon a lot for just especially specialty products. Like if there's really like one of my favorites is if somebody's their sink has become unattached. There's a couple of products that I've only been able to find on Amazon that fit the bill for the repair in a way that is just unbelievable. And it largely comes in that it basically boils down to, I think they were developed by a guy that was, he's a small business guy. He's just like us. He was kept going there and he figured out a solution to the problem. And then he said, this is a great solution to the problem. I think I'll set up a little contract manufacturing gig to make myself a few of these. And then he realized he could sell them on Amazon, and now he's got a little side hustle selling these little products, But they exist I've only ever seen them on Amazon, and they actually lift up the sinks. Anyway, I think I did a article on those.
We did, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, but I've only ever been able to find them on Amazon. So I use Amazon a lot. I look at Amazon a lot for a lot of my consumables, saw blades and stuff like that. Why? Folks, you have to add in your shipping too, so understand it's the cost. But lots of times, if I know I need saw blades, I'm going to look and see what Amazon's got them for because generally they're less expensive, and it just works. So you got to kind of be heads up on this stuff.
Yeah. So what other sources are you using, Larry?
Well, for online sources or just sources in general?
Yeah, just online sources. I mean, so we talked about places like Supply House.
Yeah.
We talk about Amazon. There's other specific places to buy, plumbing parts. And you can scour the internet for that, because sometimes you can't get especially plumbing parts, cartridges and things like that.
Ugh.
They're very difficult to find. And sometimes you can, it's easier to get them on the internet. Sometimes there's places down the street that are, go back to specific places. But, so then you've got, what else do you got, Larry? So, you got rewards.
I want to mention one other thing. Look at Craigslist and look at Facebook Marketplace. Because if you need stuff, just for example, if you need concrete blocks, and you need a bunch of them, this isn't onesie twosies, but if you need 1,000 concrete blocks, sometimes guys have extra and they sell them on Facebook. And it's like $1 a block versus $2 if you buy them new. So you got to be aware of that stuff. Play on that way. And then and then Craigslist, same thing. I tend to stay off Craigslist, but anyway. But Facebook Marketplace is a good source. So anyway, those are online sources. So look around on the internet, right? So then I wanted to talk a little bit about how else do you save money. So as a member of the FI community, there's a great big thing all about credit card rewards, and I don't want to get into a long discussion on this because it's its own show, but folks, if you're buying a lot of materials, credit cards offer cash back and they have sign-up bonuses. And you can save yourself thousands and thousands of dollars in a year if you're buying a lot of materials. Now, I want to end it right there, Johnny, because it just gets it. Like I said, it's too much.
End it right there. Just pay your credit card bills off, please.
Yeah, and pay your credit card bills. But I give people two resources. One is ChooseFI.com. They have a travel rewards section. It talks all about travel rewards that go on your credit cards, and that all has to do with spend. And so you can look there. It's a free course, doesn't cost you anything. And the other one is the Points Guy on the internet. Same thing. Don't leave money on the table. If you're buying this stuff and you're paying for it on a credit card, you're leaving money on the table if you're not taking full advantage of some of this stuff. So just think about it. Lots of resources. Go out and do a look on that one. One of my other things, trade groups, right? So there's the Association of Certified Handyman Professionals. There's the National Association of Remodelers, which is NARI. There's a bunch of different things. Every industry has its own trade group, right? Look at being a member of a trade group. There's lots of reasons. You can get cash discounts. You can get other things. There's insurance. There's benefits. There's discounts. There's advice. There's blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on. Need to do a cost evaluation on that, right? If it costs you a couple of $100, but you can save $10,000 a year, that's a no-brainer, right? Take a look at them. Everybody's got one. They're in every single industry, right, John? Are you a member of any of those?
Yeah, there's great benefits to these things.
Yes.
I mean, now, once again, you have to be able to justify it and use it. So if you're in the handyman business, if you're in the contractor business, obviously it's something to look at. If you're going to do just something small around the house, probably not.
Probably not, right? But again, if you're contemplating a major remodel, you might need to run the numbers on it. If you're doing a major remodel. Anyway, there's the other thing, Johnny. There's social media and podcasts. I keep thinking of the Handyman Pros radio show, amongst many, many others. Great sources of information, right?
Great resource.
Yeah.
Great resource. Yeah.
So I don't know, John. The spaceship. The other day,
you're there already.
I'm there already. The other day, I was in the spaceship, and the guy is filling out the application for the Intergalactic Abduction Organization. I'm like, dude, what the heck, man?
Was seasonal promotion?
I'm not sure. I hope he was taking advantage. It's the one.
Like those seasonal promotions, right?
It's the once a millennia.
Let's leave it right there.
Yeah, it's a once a millennia seasonal promotion, and there you go. So wow, we come up with some good ones, Johnny. I got to tell you, it's kitschy, but that's okay. We like that. Thank you, by the way. Thank you very little. Folks, if you enjoy the Handyman Pros radio show, please tell your friends and neighbors. Tell them, if you're out there you're hanging out down at the local bar as my friend, and you don't happen to run into John, which would be a miracle if you're in North Atlanta. But if you're out there and you're just talking to somebody, they ask you about stuff, hey, give them our name. Tell them we're out there. Tell them we do it, that we do this funky thing that you can listen to for free every single week, right here. If you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can send us an email, questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. We have updated our website, Johnny. My good friend John has updated our website. We're pretty excited. One of the biggest advantages to our new edition of the website is all of the shows are now in a what would we call it, Johnny? It's a blog type post, but they're all there, and all you have to do is scroll down. Yeah, it's much easier to get to them, and they actually have a player in it, so when you hit it, it plays. We're pretty proud of that. We are not well, John's a tech guy, but we're not really website builders, so please, understand it. Anyway, we do have a Facebook group that's @Handyman Pros, and we try to stay pretty active on that. We do follow that pretty well, and we do like to answer questions and things like that out there. So, all right, with that, John, anything else to add?
No, sir. That should do it. We will see you next week
on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.